You can now subscribe to Strava Craft Coffee and save 20% every single time you get your coffee because they'll send it straight to your door at an interval of your choice. You can choose every 2, 3, 4, 6, or 8 weeks. And, of course, you can choose whatever style of coffee you want, and you can choose how much you want. It's amazing because you'll never have to continue thinking about when to go get your coffee or, that terrible feeling when you go in to your coffee supply at 8 in the morning before a big meeting and there's nothing left. That'll never happen to you when you subscribe to Strava Craft Coffee. So check them out today. And of course, use that code DNVR20. Heck, if you just want to try one bag to see if you like their CBD infused coffee, you can again use that code DNVR20 and have it shipped straight to your door. So make sure you check out Strava Craft Coffee today.
Number one for the one and only DNVR. 2 goes out to Zach, Mace, RK, and the bar. 3 for Mr. B in that old trophy case. Number 4 we're still waiting for. Well, bring on the chase. Out on the field, a mile high, Broncos win is our desire. Couple with a breakfast crew and a friend, bleed orange and blue to the bitter end. Come and join us, the DNVR. We are DNVR.
Just an absolute banger, honestly. Never gets old. Well, it might get old eventually, but right now it's super not old.
It's perfect.
I love it so much.
Looks like we lost Ryan there, but man, absolutely love the song. And Ryan, welcome back. Welcome into the DNVR Broncos podcast on this fantastic Friday. Dion Lewis kicking us off with the My Boys. Ryan, what's up?
What's up, man? Great start. Hot start here. We got
We're
the pot
rolling.
started and Manny... we got the pot started and Manny Ramirez snapped it right over my head. We're still having a little bit of connectivity issues here, but we'll work our way through it. Before we get started, a shout out to MSU Denver. Go to msudenver.edu/online. They're the presenting sponsor of this show, and they're also the place to go for affordable and online education. You can do it from anywhere, but they're based right here in Denver. And we love them a lot. So check out msudenver.edu/online to see all they have to offer. 40-plus hybrid programs, 750 total classes. Really, really great stuff going on over there at MSU Denver Online. So, Zach, I already heard you say My Boys. So I guess it's just you and me right now. We're waiting on Mace. Hopefully he'll join us here in a second. But it is Friday. Oh, man. What this is a long week for you, Zach. Felt pretty long to me.
Yes. I mean, this may be the week where I had no idea what the days are. Still really don't. Although today feeling like a Friday because we got football right around the corner and we got the Denver Nuggets kicking off their Western Conference Final Series tonight against the Lakers. What a great time to be a Denver sports fan. It continues.
Amazing time to be a Denver sports fan, although I would make the case that there's never a bad time to be a Denver sports fan. But I wore this shirt today. It says, "We don't skip steps." It's a Nuggets, Mike Malone and Tim Connolly kind of, buzz phrase for them that they go to a lot. Our guys, Adam, Harrison, Brendan, Eric, they all kind of embraced it as well. I'm getting to a point here about the Broncos, so give me a second. But essentially the idea behind it is we built this thing from the ground up. We knew that if we're going to win a championship in Denver, we're going to have to do it differently than everyone else. You're not just going to be able to wait for the big guy to become a free agent and win a championship off it. Now, the Broncos are very familiar with waiting for the big guy to become a free agent and winning a championship off of it. At least their most recent championship was done that way. But I would say the first 2 championships in Denver were done the other way, the right way, I would make the case. And there were no steps skipped then. And I think, to be honest, if the Broncos are going to win a championship anytime soon, they can't skip steps. And because of that is why I think that this fan base needs to be patient. And I know for a fact that is not their strong suit. And I know there's probably people saying, whoa, we've been patient for 4 years now. We're ready to win. And I 100% sympathize with that feeling. But I almost think that the clock is actually at 0 right now. It's not, or I guess it's at 1. It's not at 4 years and 1 week. It's really, the 4 years there, that was you're trying to find a plan. And we talked about it a lot, Zach, that the Broncos did not have a plan. And it was very evident. Now you have a plan, and you got to stick to the plan. The plan absolutely involves Drew Lock being the franchise quarterback here in Denver. But if you think you're just going to be able to throw this team into a microwave and say, go win a championship, it's just not going to work that way. You have to enjoy the ride. You have to enjoy the journey. And you have to allow guys like Drew Lock to grow, guys like Jerry Jeudy to learn from their mistakes. And to be honest, if you believe in him, and I'm talking to John Elway directly here, if you believe in him, you have to allow Vic Fangio to grow right along with this team. And so there was so much frustration in Broncos country on Monday night and Tuesday morning, and probably even, leaking into the rest of the week. And it makes sense. And I was with you because that was a winnable game. And you hate when it's might be on the coaching staff that you lost in the first place. But I just say, look for the signs throughout this process, and look for the progress. And if you see it, then it's okay. The results are important, of course. You got to get them. You can't continue to pile negative results on negative results and negative results. But you got to look for the process. Is Vic Fangio learning from his mistakes, which you hoped he got out of his system in year 1? He clearly didn't. Is Drew Lock maturing and growing and becoming closer to that franchise quarterback that you and I both believe he can? Is this young offense coming into their own? Is Pat Shurmur the right guy for that job? You got to get these pieces right. And if you're just going to sit there and wait for something to come down, from the heavens to send you into a Super Bowl, I don't think it's coming anytime soon. So you can't skip steps. You got to ride. You got to love the process is what I'm trying to tell Broncos fans.
Interesting message to have before the Broncos go on the road to play the Pittsburgh Steelers, the undefeated 1-0 Pittsburgh Steelers. I feel like we're tempering expectations for potentially this game, the rest of the season potentially. But Ryan, I completely agree with every single point that you made. This is something where you didn't start the process in 2016, right after the Super Bowl. You didn't start it in 2017, the year after you missed the playoffs for the first time after Peyton Manning. It's really starting. I guess it started a tiny bit last year, but really with the full group, it's starting right now. So you're 100% right with those points. And Drew Lock is the way to get there. I truly believe the Broncos are going to be too good to get a Trevor Lawrence, to get a Justin Fields this year. So that's not going to happen. And if Drew Lock doesn't work out, I think the magical thing to fall out of the sky would be an Aaron Rodgers. But if he's playing the way he's playing, I think they'll just say, okay, Jordan Love, you're just going to be a backup for many, many years. So you're right, Ryan. Ride and die with Drew Lock. And so far, not just this past game, but the 6 starts we've seen, it looks very promising in Broncos land, despite, being 0-1 right now. It's
so hard to heap praise onto Drew Lock when the team scored 14 points.
Yeah.
But I want to do it because when I rewatched the game, I again came back saying, yep, that's the Drew Lock that I thought they were going to get. And not in a bad way, in a positive way. He looked composed. He made plays with his feet. He made plays with his rocket arm. He did so many things right, and a compilation of mistakes, some from him, some from Jerry Jeudy, some play calling mistakes, some from Melvin Gordon, that derailed them from really being able to have a positive offensive game. And it derailed them so far that they had a very negative offensive game. Like 14 points, never acceptable. But if you just watch each play in a vacuum, you come away saying Drew Lock played really well. So again, I'm not necessarily trying to temper expectations for this week, but I think that first game should teach everyone a lesson for what to look for, what to expect. They showed us on Monday night, and it doesn't mean they can't be ready this week, but they weren't ready. They weren't ready to be a team that beats a team that was in the AFC Championship last year when it comes down to just one or two plays. And they could be ready at any time. But in the meantime, I just think it's really important to look for the signs. And Drew Lock, to me, who is the most important signal giver, gave very positive signs in that game.
Yeah, he was green lights all the way. And Pastor Rhett given a great point here. He says injuries have taken off the pressure for the team this year. And I think that's also something that's coming into the mix. Ryan, the Broncos are going to be without their highest paid player in Von Miller, their third highest paid player in AJ Boye, likely, very likely, without Phillip Lindsay, a Pro Bowler. And then Cortland Sutton and Bradley Chubb, two of your best players on the team, aren't going to be playing at 100% if Cortland does end up playing, which I do think he will end up playing. To answer Frankie's question, I do think Cortland ends up playing, but he's not going to be 100%. So Ryan, just right there, not to give excuses for this team, but that's just the straight up truth about where this team is at. And so you do have to take all of that into consideration going into a game when you're predicting what happens in a game, and then also after the fact. And what I don't want to do is Monday morning come in here and for the first time say, well, they had injuries, and give them all these excuses. No, because it's a fact going into the game that the Broncos are really beat up. They're young. So that's just what to expect going into this game.
I think you're totally right. And you mentioned highest paid players. They're without Von Miller. They're without AJ Boye. That's 1 and 3. Where does Juwan James rank on that scale?
He would be, he's even taken out of that equation. So they'd be 3 of their top 4 highest paid players.
That's tough. That's really tough. And on Monday night, they were without quite arguably the most dangerous player on their team, which is Cortland Sutton. Yeah. And maybe the easily top 5 most dangerous players on their team, Phillip Lindsay, for the second half of that game. So, man, it's such a weird game because it's really disappointing that they lost when they could have won. But excuses almost feels like a bad word for what they had. Like, they had a reason to lose, and unfortunately, it came through. Okay. Oh, you have one more thing to say?
I was just going to say that they could have also won, though. There were reasons, excuses that why they lost, but they could have also won that game, which at the same time as disappointing and frustrating that is, that's also encouraging because this was a team that just was in the AFC Championship game, and the Broncos lost by 2 with all of those things going on.
Absolutely. Exactly. And we've already gone through all the reasons why they should have won. Okay. So now the Broncos find themselves in a hole. I put that in quotes because it's just one game. But we talked about this, I think all 3 of us in our season predictions that we made right after the schedule came out before they lost all these guys, had them winning that game and had them making the playoffs. Now, you and Mace both had them losing before the game, but you did still have them making the playoffs. In my opinion, if that's going to happen, they have to steal one now, one that they shouldn't win. And what a perfect opportunity to level the playing field this weekend. You have an opportunity to go steal one in a game that you should not win. You're on the road. You're 7.5-point dogs, and you're going up against a team whose strength very well matches up very well with your greatest weakness. which of course is the offensive line, though it didn't look that way on Monday night. That's at least still how I feel, is that's the one thing that can really hold this team back. So, Zach, the question is, if they're going to go steal one in Pittsburgh, how do they do it?
Well, they've got to do a couple of things. They have to get pressure on Big Ben. And of course, they don't have Von Miller, so that's a tough task for the defense. But you don't have A.J. Boye. You're playing two rookies, an undrafted one and a third-round pick. It's going to be the first time that they both play an extensive, almost a near full game in the NFL. So you can't let Big Ben sit there and just pick them apart because they have very good receivers on their team, just starting off with Juju Smith-Schuster. If there's no pressure on Big Ben, it's going to be a long, long day. You have to get pressure and do it however you want. Blitz, if Bradley Chubb's got to be good, you got to get pressure up off the inside. Bring Kareem Jackson. Bring the corners on blitzes. You have to get pressure on him. And then on the other side, Ryan, you got to hit big plays. Drew Lock needs to hit those big plays down the field, or it can be from the running game. It's not all on Drew Lock's shoulders. And I'm also looking at Pat Shurmur to design some things. Get Noah Fant moving on a slant where he catches the ball 7 yards downfield. It's an easy catch for him, not over the shoulder. And when he catches it, he's full speed already. Those are the plays the Broncos need. And KJ Hamler, get him involved. Now, he may play 20 plays this week, but let him touch the ball 5 times. 2 screens, easy plays. He doesn't have to have all of training camp to do that. A little pitch to him. Be creative with him because he is your explosive playmaker. So those are the 2 things that I think need to happen for the Broncos to pull up a pretty huge upset this week.
Yeah, the pressure on Big Ben is probably everything. And again, I mentioned this all week. If you watch that Monday Night Football game, the man cannot move. He's
a statue.
You might as well put like a little slot at the back of his drops where he just has to put his feet in there and keep them there. That's like how much of a statue he is. He looks unbelievably slow. Now he's still hard to bring down because just like a statue is. You're gonna have to get a lot of people really mad to take down a statue. But he can really pick you apart. He can really pick you apart when it comes to just standing back there. So you're going to have to trust guys like Bassie and Ojemudia in single coverage, and you're going to have to put pressure on this guy, and he's going to beat you. There will be a time where you try to bring pressure, you put those guys in single coverage, and they get beat. When you talk about Juju Smith-Schuster, Deontay Johnson is also a very good wide receiver. James Washington, a former second-round pick, I believe. So they've got guys that can make your life really difficult, but you cannot force Ojemudia and Bassie and even Bryce Callahan to cover these guys for 3.5, 4 seconds, or you will get burned. So I'm 100% with you. That is 1A as to how you win this football game. 1B is you got to stop it on the other side. And honestly, this might be 1A. You cannot let them tee off on Drew Lock because they absolutely teed off on Daniel Jones like they were at Topgolf. Just like it was so easy to just strutting up there, put your club over the little sensor, ball comes out, you smash it. Like that's what they were doing. And the Giants, who, formerly led by Pat Shurmur, now led by Jason Garrett, had no answer for this. Like, it should have been criminal that they just let Daniel Jones continue to get teed off on without bringing any counter plays to the table. So if you do this to Drew Lock, you're going to have a really tough time. I think one thing that people don't realize is how fine the margins are in NFL football. I think a perfect example is to watch Joe Burrow last night. At a certain point he was dialed in, man. He was making every throw. And then in the third quarter, he took a really big hit and just got flattened. And if you watch after that play, he was not nearly as precise for almost the entire rest of the game. Even when they were making plays, the tight end has to make like a spinning left-handed catch. there's just there's really fine margins in the NFL, and when your quarterback starts getting flattened, his margin for error goes up. He starts making more errors. He starts seeing people. So you got to protect him early, and you got to protect him often, and you cannot let him get smacked. And I'm really of the belief that the Steelers said that's what we did to Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones and Drew Lock, are similar players. Send the dogs and see what he can do to beat you. So Drew has to be able to beat them in the same way that Ben has to be able to beat the Broncos when they bring pressure. Drew is going to have to hit a big play to a guy like KJ Hamler, a guy like Jerry Jeudy, Courtland Sutton if he plays. Get it up there and let those guys run under it in their single coverage. But, man, you better have some counters ready early to put those guys on their heels a little bit, because if you let Bud Dupree and TJ Watt and all these guys just tee off on Drew Lock, you're going to have a bad time.
And here's the reason why the Steelers should absolutely load the box on every single play and bring the pressure with more than just Bud Dupree and TJ Watt, is because then that'll really help them stop the running game. And the Broncos are very likely going to be without Phillip Lindsay. So it's all going to be on Melvin Gordon's shoulders. And last week, when the Steelers said, we're not letting Saquon Barkley beat us, they did just that. Saquon rushed for 0.4 yards per carry. Not even half a yard per carry. That is insane. If the Broncos do anything close to that this week in terms of being that bad, it's going to be extremely, extremely rough, because they will get to Drew Lock. If they know that the Broncos have to throw the ball every single play, it's going to be rough. I was very, very, very impressed with Garrett Bowles last week, but he's going up against way different competition this week. The Broncos rushed for over 100 yards last week, and if you eliminate that, then it's going to be tough for Bowles. And, of course, on the other side, it's going to be very, very, very difficult for Elijah Wilkinson.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we got Mace in the house. Let's bring in Mace. What up, my man?
Hey, sorry, guys. What happened was I haven't had more than 3 hours sleep in one burst in about 2 weeks, and I think my system just finally up and said when, because somehow I slept through 5 separate alarms today.
That's a 5-alarm sleep session right there.
Yeah, I think my body just gave up and said, you are sleeping whether you like it or not. And every point you made there, RK, spot on about this. And last week, the Steelers, according to Pro Football Focus, had 37 total pressures on Daniel Jones.
It's insane.
Garrett Bowles.
Unfair.
Yeah, Garrett Bowles, to his credit, only allowed 1 pressure. In fact, everyone on the offensive line, according to PFF, was credited with 1 pressure allowed against the Titans. But this is a completely different animal, and who knows how this elbow is going to affect Garrett Bowles. He should play, but there was that shot of him. I saw it yesterday. Did you have the shot, Zach, where Garrett was kind of had his arm in the air, or was that somebody else?
Yeah. He looks like
Yeah.
Mr. Bionic with his arm right now. I mean, he had it in a big sleeve with a huge brace over it.
Yeah. So you wonder about range of motion with that elbow and with that arm. If it's not there, and against Dupree or TJ Watt, then that's going to put them in some trouble. So the other thing is with the Steelers, it's not like you also mentioned RK. The interior wise, they are solid, and that's a big part of why Saquon Barkley had no room to run, was because the guys on the interior were crashing through. Now that's where I think the Broncos do have a significant advantage over the Giants, is on the interior O-line. Cushenberry got praise from Glasgow yesterday, but Dalton Reisner and Glasgow both also had good games. Now the Steelers, they'll probably try to pose a lot of questions to Cushenberry. I think we'll probably see a few more A-gap blitzes, A-gap rushes than we would see from them against the Giants. But I'm pretty confident that those 3 guys on the interior are going to do a better job than the Giants guys did, and allow for maybe not some huge holes, but just enough to ensure that the running game doesn't collapse the way it did for the Giants with Saquon on Monday night.
You'll rarely hear me say this in an analysis of a football game, but I think the Broncos need to get east and west in this game. I think they need to run some reverses. I think they need to run some end arounds, some screens. Get away from the interior of this Pittsburgh Steelers defense, because they're really stout from their pass rushers to their interior defensive line to their linebackers. The middle of that defense is a bore. And like I said, I almost exclusively say you got to get north and south. I actually think you need to get east and west in this game. I wouldn't mind on the first play of the game seeing them throw a pitch to Melvin Gordon that actually results in a reverse going the other way to KJ Hamler or something along those lines. Make this defense worry about them getting north and south because you're getting east and west effectively.
So, Ryan, when you say that, to me, it makes me think that you want the game to slow down and you don't want the Broncos to get in a shootout. Am I taking that right?
Not necessarily. I just think they need to make this defense worry about what's going on outside the numbers. Because, again, if you watch what they did to the Giants, they just said, like, you're not doing anything in the middle of this football field. And they didn't get anything from Saquon Barkley until they finally threw a screen to him on the outside and let him get in some one-on-one matchups out there. So you don't want to get into a shootout with Big Ben. He's pretty well tested in duels. But I just think you need to make this defense, you need to make those guys on the edge feel like they can't just go right at Drew Lock. They need to set the edge and stick with their fundamentals, because the Broncos are, not necessarily using trick plays, but just a little bit of misdirection, making them think they're going one way and going the other.
And also pre-snap motion, at least you have guys move and get them outside the box, force Pittsburgh to cover more area laterally pre-snap, and then maybe that can open up some windows in the box from time to time. But you're right, you got to use every square inch of the field. You do have some possibilities. You mentioned KJ Hamler on a reverse. Noah Fant in the screen game and on swing passes outside. They went away from this in the second half. Go right back to it in Pittsburgh, because that's a way to kind of break things up a little bit and get them out of the box, get them covering more territory, and maybe that can open up some things for Melvin Gordon up the middle.
Noah Fant had 5 targets in the first half last week. He had 5 catches, 81 yards, and a touchdown. Get him 5 targets in the first half against the Steelers, but then get him 5 targets in the second half as well, because he proved to just be an absolute nightmare for that Titans defense. And then you went away from him. Now, you're likely going to have Courtland Sutton back, I believe, in this game, and so that's going to help you as well. But guys, when you talk about kind of spreading the offense out, and I get doing the plays to the outside, but if you are running 5 wide and 4 wide, then what that does is just puts a ton of pressure on your tackles, your line, but specifically the tackles. Do you guys like the matchups of Elijah Wilkinson against Bud Dupree and TJ Watt, Garrett Bowles against those guys? Or do you want to keep, a tight end in on every other play?
I mean, no one likes that matchup. Not you, not me, not Pat Shurmur, not Elijah Wilkinson, not Garrett Bowles. It's this happens in football games. There's going to be places where you're outmatched. I will say this, and I think Broncos fans will sympathize with me here. How many times have we had games where we looked at the Broncos pass rushers versus the other team's tackles and said, oh my God, these guys are completely outmatched, and yet the Broncos pass rushers didn't wreck the game. It's happened quite a bit, am I right?
Yeah, definitely.
And so that tells you there are ways. There are ways to scheme your way out of this mismatch, and it's up to Pat Shurmur to find it. And one of those ways, absolutely, is chipping. Now, you can't double chip every play. Although Jerry Jeudy is so good at winning single matchups that I would consider maybe doing it a couple times. But if you double chip, at most, you've got 2 routes out there. So you're counting on those guys to win their matchups. And if it's Jerry Jeudy and Courtland Sutton, those guys are capable of it. But it also means there's 2 routes and usually 2 safeties. And so there's a chance that, they can double cover them. So those guys, like Garrett Bowles, Elijah Wilkinson, are going to have to win some one-on-one plays to give this team any bit of a chance, because you can't double chip both sides on every play.
Yeah, no, you certainly can't. Am Ballrith asks, is KJ Hamler going to play? Well, what I can tell you is the 2 practices the Broncos have had this week, he's been a full participant in both of those practices. So he's definitely trending in the right direction. I think he will play. And guys, what we've kind of talked about every aspect of the game except for one, and that is the Pittsburgh Steelers running attack. And rightfully so. It's maybe the least dangerous part of their team. But get ready for this stat. Since the beginning of 2018, the Pittsburgh Steelers are undefeated. They're 12-0-1 when they get 100 or more rushing yards. Undefeated, including week 1 against the Giants. They had over 100 yards and won that game, obviously. When they don't get 100 rushing yards, they're 6-14. So they can still win games when they don't get 100 rushing yards, but they're likely to lose. And now a good rushing game helps everyone, right? Well, no other team can say that. The greats, the Patriots of the last couple of years, the Chiefs of the last couple, the Saints, you can go down the list. No other team can say that. And the Broncos in that time frame are 10-9 when they rush for over 100 yards. So really, as much attention as there is on Ben Roethlisberger and stopping him, and rightfully so, it's not just about stopping him. You got to stop the run game. Because Ben can throw for 400 yards and win. Ben can also throw for 400 yards and lose. He's proven that throughout his career. Since the beginning of 2018, if you stop the Steelers on the ground, then you got a better chance than to win.
And that means not James Conner this week because he's going to be out. Benny Snell Jr. is the name everyone has become familiar with because he went for 113 yards on Monday night. Now, Zach, is some of that though it's a kind of a chicken and egg thing that they're running to preserve leads, so thus it's going to be skewed that way? That's the one thing that that I hear that stat on the surface. I think, okay, how much of it is second half running with a lead? Because it maybe this team with how Ben Roethlisberger has evolved, losing Antonio Brown and not playing with Roethlisberger last year, it was a team that certainly wasn't equipped to come back in the second half of 2019.
Then Mace, why can't any other team say that?
No. Here's what it is. To me, it's not as much about them running to preserve leads as it is about them throwing when they're losing or if it's close. Pretty much, they love Big Ben and they ride Big Ben a lot. And pretty much if the game is tied or they are losing, they just chuck it. And the running game just goes away. So that's what I think this stat is more about, is you got to put them in that position, because if not, then yes, they run to preserve the lead. But it's not hard to run for 100 yards. Like, every football team in America thinks they're going to run for 100 yards every week.
Well, I don't know. Against the Broncos defense, so I kind of disagree with that. The Titans wanted to run for 200 yards last week, and Derrick Henry was only able to run for 111 on 31 carries. So, I mean, I think that's a good thing for this Broncos defense. If that stat holds up this week, then I think that's a very good thing for the Broncos defense, because Derrick Henry, yes, he did top 100 yards last week, but it was a tough 100 yards for him.
The quietest 100-yard game that you're ever going to see from a player individually is the one that Derrick Henry had. But part of it also was that the Broncos never put the Titans in a position where they felt like they had to go away from it.
Exactly.
And
the Titans,
if they convert, and it's as simple as converting that 4th and goal at the 1, getting that touchdown probably means the Titans might have had to go away from it in the second half.
The Titans the coaching staff deserves a lot of credit, because they came into the game with a just stubborn belief that they're going to run the ball 30 times with Derrick Henry no matter what. And they beat the Broncos because of that, because they did not abandon the run despite the fact that the Broncos were bottling up Derrick Henry 3 out of every 4 plays. So that was just that was a commitment to their game plan that I think really paid off for them, because you saw, they are a team that is very well equipped to convert 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3s. And they had a bunch of 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4s, and they were fine with that going into the game. They possessed the ball, and they made life difficult on the Broncos defense, because the Broncos on defense said all we have to do is stop Derrick Henry, we're going to win the game. They kind of did. And unfortunately for the Broncos, the Titans had those play action passes that they were really confident in, and they hit them a bunch. So I get what you're saying, Zach, but there's no team that goes into a game saying they're not going to run the ball for 100 yards. It's not that much of a milestone as a team. For a player, it's a milestone. But, any team believes they're running the ball for 100 yards going into the game. So for the Broncos, they have to put, it's an old Vance Joseph formula, the recipe, the formula. They have to get themselves a lead so that the Steelers panic and start throwing the ball more than they want to.
Yeah, and then you just got to stop them with your two rookies. And when you were saying that about the game plan and giving credit to the Titans for sticking with that, that's how every team should be. And it just made me even more disappointed that the Broncos got away from their game plan of going to Noah Fant last week, because that's what they should have done. And Big Smooth 84 says they didn't get away from Noah Fant. They didn't have time, and drops killed them. Well, that's not really true, Big Smooth. After the game, Noah Fant literally admitted the game plan shifted to go away from him. And you can't do that. I don't care if you have 6 plays in the third quarter. If one of your receivers or running backs or tight ends has 5 catches for 81 yards and a touchdown in the first half, make sure one of those plays goes to him.
Absolutely. All right. Any last keys that you guys have, Mace? Zach and I basically hit on the main ones, which is, rush the passer and stop them from rushing the passer. Do you have anything maybe a little more off the wall that you think the Broncos need to do if they're going to pull off this upset as 7.5-point underdogs?
I think they need a takeaway. They need to win the takeaway battle, and one of those takeaways has to set up a short field, and they certainly can't afford to have a giveaway, give Big Ben and company a short field. Because it's funny how you look at Monday night's game for the Broncos, and you can flip any about 10 or 12 different things, and then the outcome is different and probably in the Broncos' favor. But it's sort of old school here. If you take away the Melvin Gordon fumble and then the Titans were scoring off that short field, then the outcome could have been different. So ball security is going to be job security for everybody on the offense and the Broncos special teams here. You can't give the Steelers a short field to work with. So I think that's kind of old school, but I'm going to also focus on that. Protect the football in this game as much as you can.
All right, guys, let's get our picks and make them official. Broncos, like you said, Ryan, 7.5-point dogs traveling to Pittsburgh on a short week, playing the early game on Sunday. No fans there, but as Mike Tomlin said, his commute is only 20 minutes from the stadium, which makes it a home field advantage for them. So who are you taking? What happens on Sunday?
Well, I love the points. I love the 7.5. I think that's too many points. I think this Broncos defense is just too good, even without A.J. Boye and Von Miller, to let this thing get out of hand. At least that's what I believe. So I like the 7.5. And to be honest, I don't know what happens after that, but I know the Broncos cover the 7.5.
No. What's the final score prediction?
Man.
You're trying to mace me on this one.
I am trying to.
You're trying to get off easy.
I'll say that the Broncos lose 27-24.
Okay, keep it close. Yep. Mace, what are you going with?
They're going to lose. I don't think they're going to get to 20 points. In fact, if you go back to the 9th game of last year for Pittsburgh, their defense has only given up more than 20 points once. There was a game they gave up 28, but there was a fumble recovery and a safety involved with it. So points are going to be at a premium against the Steelers defense, as they have for every team since the start of November last year. I've got Pittsburgh 21, Broncos 16.
Cover.
So Mace, you're taking
against the spread.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, the 7.5 is a big number, and I think one thing we've seen from this Bronco team under Vic Fangio is they do play a lot of games closer than you might expect. think back to like the Minnesota game, for example, last year. Nobody saw that game being close. So I could see something like that. I think they'll play the Steelers tough. I think they'll have their chances. I just think Pittsburgh will do a little more with their chances, in part because their defense is going to constrain the Broncos offense.
Yeah, 7.5 points is a lot. But there's a lot of things going against the Broncos in this game, like we detailed. So I'm taking Pittsburgh with the points. I think it's going to be a double-digit game. I think I'll go Steelers 27-17. Guys, just everything we talked about. They shut down, the Steelers shut down the run. So that's going to put everything on Drew Lock's shoulders, which I trust. But there's going to be a brutal pass rush in Drew Lock's face the entire game. And on the flip side, Ben Roethlisberger gets to go against 2 rookie corners. Both of those corners, by the way, graded out in the top 5 rookie corners, according to PFF last week. So I'm very impressed with those guys, but they are going up against a Hall of Fame quarterback. So I just think it's going to be a really tough game without having 2 of their 3 highest paid players. If you want to include Juwan James in there, 3 of their 4 highest paid players without a Pro Bowl running back. There are so many things going against the Broncos this game. So that's why I think it's going to be Steelers double digits.
Yeah, my heart wants me to take the Broncos, but my head is reminding me of when this offense was off in training camp, it was all because of pass rush. And you mentioned it, those guys are going to be just pinning their ears back and going after Drew Lock. And when that happened in practice, when the Broncos defense did that to the Broncos offense in practice, they struggled mightily. So my head is telling me use the information that you have at hand here, and unfortunately, I just think that the Steelers do enough and make life difficult enough, and have a Hall of Fame quarterback who makes enough plays to beat the Broncos.
I can't wait to see the social media reaction to the staff pick graphic that we put up over the weekend.
Well, we'll put it up against the spread like we were supposed to do.
We're already seeing from Bronco Tiz telling us, "Shut up, RK Mason, Zach. Broncos are winning 24-13."
Oh, and guys, something we haven't mentioned this week on the pod, I don't believe, is the rest of the AFC is 1-0, unfortunately. So it would be a great game for the Broncos to steal. But fortunately, after this week, the rest of the AFC won't be undefeated. Let's go through our picks really quick. Chiefs, 8.5-point favorites playing against the Chargers. I believe that's the biggest line of the weekend. The Broncos coming in at second with the 7.5. Ryan, you're shaking your head.
I had said this on bets, and I don't really care if I'm wrong here, but I said you would have to set the line at Chiefs minus 20.5 for me to even consider staying away from it. I think the Chargers suck. They lost their center now on top of it. I think that the Chiefs are just going to obliterate them.
Yeah.
Yeah, if the Bengals have any other kicker besides Steven Gostkowski, they tie that game against the Chargers last week and potentially beat them in overtime. So, yeah, I'm taking the Chiefs 8.5 as well.
Yeah, hey, Randy Bullock was making his kicks last night, even though he missed that big one on Sunday. But
I thought his leg fell off when he missed the field goal on Sunday.
Yeah, I, when he did that, I thought, did he literally tear a hamstring or something, or a calf muscle? What the heck happened? But
well, it was a good enough acting job to keep his job for another week.
Hey,
good job.
You got to, you got to shake it off, wave. You can bravely go on. I'm sure Bengals fans are thrilled about that. But it just, you don't want to get too much into the game comparison. But if you looking at what the Chargers offense did against the Bengals defense and compare it to what the Browns did against that Bengal defense, some of it was a bounce back for Cleveland, but LA's offense is bad. And with the injuries, it's getting worse by the day. I don't think they can score enough to keep pace in any way, shape, or form. And the other thing is lack of crowd noise at games this year. Unfortunately, it plays right into the hands of an offense like the Chiefs. So
wasn't going to be much crowd noise anyways.
Yeah, exactly. There would have been a lot of Chief fans there. Although first Charger game at SoFi, you never know. But the Chiefs are going to win this game. I'd say they win this thing by 3 scores. I think they win 31-14, 38-21, something like that.
Well, I'm curious if you guys go a similar direction with the final game of the weekend in the AFC, and that's the Saints 5.5-point favorites going into Las Vegas to open up the Raiders Stadium on Monday Night Football. 5.5 points for the Saints. Do you feel the same way that you did about the Chiefs?
Not quite, but I do think they win the football game by a touchdown or more. A little bit. I think a little bit of an overreaction towards the Raiders for beating the Panthers, who everyone thought was tanking anyway. I continue my belief that that's not a great football team, and the Saints went and laid a pretty convincing beatdown on Tom Brady's Buccaneers. So I think they go out there and win this one convincingly.
Mace?
Got to go with the Saints here. If the number was up to, say, 8 points, I'd go with the Raiders just to get it to lose but cover. But I think New Orleans wins this one by right around a touchdown.
Yeah, I think 5.5 is way too easy. The Saints and Sean Payton's a guy that has proven throughout his career he's not afraid to run up the score. So I think we could see that happening. The key for the Raiders is going to be what they had last week. It's going to be Josh Jacobs. Can he be an MVP candidate that he proved last week he was? If he can do that, it'll keep the game close. But even then, I still see the Saints winning.
Yep, absolutely. Speaking of Josh Jacobs, I'm going up against him in the Madden League divisional playoffs coming up tomorrow. I got a dub last night, got out of the wild card. Now I get to go face the Arizona Cardinals and Josh Jacobs.
Your team.
That's
Are you going to be able to beat your team?
A little painful right there.
No, because I also have my team, which is the Eagles.
My gosh.
It is a bird-on-bird matchup, which always good.
You are that person that just has pretty much every team except for like 2 are your teams.
No, that's not true. I just like to latch on to players and coaches and things like that, and then cheer them on.
Are you a Falcons fan too? I mean,
no, I hate the Falcons.
Why don't you just take on every bird squad and you can be the flock?
Not the Falcons, but I also I like the Seahawks mostly just from a betting perspective.
How about the Ravens? I mean, it's fun. I mean,
wow, there are a lot of bird teams.
Yeah, the last 2 teams we mentioned are the best birds in the league.
Yeah,
and have MVP caliber quarterbacks.
I mean, Lamar's awesome, but I'm not much of a Ravens guy. Raven's a terrible bird anyway. It's just ugly.
Yeah, intimidating. It's black. It's named after something literary. I mean, how can you not love that?
And our wonderful producer Allie chiming in says it should only be the Eagles.
How could you? How could you not love Kyler Murray and the sexiest man alive, Cliff Kingsbury?
Hey, they looked really good on Sunday.
Yep, they sure did.
Going up against
just as I told everyone they would.
The NFC champion.
All right. Well, I think that's going to wrap up the live portion of the podcast today. Thanks to everyone who tuned in on the live. Appreciate all of you. And, of course, for those of you who are listening on the pod, we roll along. But for today, on the live portion, we'll talk to you later.